All right, hello everyone. Welcome to A Little Bit of Everything. My name is Brad Corlett, and this is my channel where I talk about a little bit of everything. So today we're going over Blenv, Blenv, which is a project that I've created. It's short for Blender Environment. Think about it like virtual environment, but for a Blender Python project. One thing that I've noticed with creating Blender Python projects is it's kind of difficult to test them. It's hard to have your development environment, and then there seems to be a lot of sort of boilerplate you have to do to actually test it. And so then, you write your code and then you put it into the Blender directory structure, and then you get polluted with all kinds of your different development or different projects that you're running. And so this is kind of an easier way to test those without polluting your actual Blender installation, the one that you use when you're, using Blender. So this kind of lets you separate your development work, makes it super easy to test things. I've added hot reloading and different environmental configs and different commands that you can run. I want to do a walkthrough and show exactly how easy it is to use this, how easy it is to set up an environment, and how easy it is to start testing your application. And in order to do that, let's first start by taking a look here. This is the GitHub page. I'll show you the link right there. And so right now, it is in beta, as it says here on the README project. So it's possible that the configuration or CLI may change as we go through. So think about that. So what I want to do right now is let's just walk through setting up a project completely from scratch, right? So what would you do? All right, so let's make a new project here. So we're going to make Blenv test app. So we open this. Yes, we trust the authors. There's literally nothing in it. How could I not? So to start, what we need to do, let's first create ourselves a new Python environment. So we're first going to use Python version 3.11 to make our virtual environment. You have to be compatible with your current version of Blender. And we're doing Blender 4.4 and Python 3.11 for this. So then next thing we want to do is, of course, activate our environment. Then we need to install Blenv right there with pip, just pip install Blenv. And then you can see once we've got that done, we've got our help menu right here. So there's different commands. So of course, create a new Blender environment, right? So this would just be like creating a new virtual environment. And then when you hit run Blender, this will actually allow you to run Blender via through your virtual environment. So it's like using the source command to activate your Python virtual environment. And then setup here, we'll go over this in a minute. So we are going to create a directory here for our source code. We need to create a toml file because we're making a Blender Python extension. So we're going to make a couple of files here. Note that we're doing Blender Python extensions, not add-ons. Add-ons are the old deprecated way. So this Blender toml file, I'm not really going to go through all of this. That would be for a different tutorial, but this is basically just a hello world. If you've seen any hello world for creating a Blender Python extension, this is not going to be very much different than that. So then what we need to do, so we've got our toml file, and then I'm going to paste in this right here into our init file. So this that I just pasted in comes from the Blender official tutorial. Here we are on Blender's official documentation, and so you can see this URL here. This is what we're using here for our sort of dummy application. So basically just this code right here. So you can read through all of this. Again, this is their add-on tutorial, but we're making an extension, but the code still works the same. What's different is the toml file. So we're just grabbing this right here just so we have a simple application that we can use. So we've got a skeleton for our project. We've installed some of our dependencies. The next thing that we want to do is run this command right here, Blenv create. This is like creating a virtual environment, but of course creating our Blender virtual environment. So you can see that we wrote a blenv file and a .env file. So let's take a quick look at those. So the .env, what we're doing here is overriding the Blender user resources. That environment variable controls where a lot of different things like scripting and app templates and all sorts of things reside. And so our virtual environment is overriding it to be this, our local path to where we're developing our code. And then we also created this .blenv YAML file, which is going to be the actual information for your project. It'll be your project configuration. What we need to do is let's define our extension, which technically is going to go under add-ons. So we're going to replace this add-ons block. And so this right here, this key is just any arbitrary name that you want to add for your project. It happens to match the folder name, but it doesn't necessarily have to. Source is the path to where that is relative to the blenv.yaml file. So of course it's just pointing right here to this directory. And so you want to point to the directory that is going to contain your Blender manifest toml file. And so now, if you look at the blend file, we have an environments key. Obviously you can ignore this, right? This is just the version of Blenv. It's all one because this is still beta. And so you have our environments key, and you can define multiple environments. We just have a default environment. And then our project has multiple add-ons, and you could possibly have multiple app extensions. So we're going to keep a really simple project for this one. So basically your environments can link to multiple projects. So basically what that means is, let's say you have two different extensions that you want to keep in the same repository. You could set up different environments to test one extension versus the other, and then a third environment which might have both of them if you need that. So you can kind of define multiple different things. You can point them to different env files should you need to. And then of course this is going to point to your actual Blender binary. The source code is going to do what it can to try and find all of the try to find your system's built-in Blender. If it can't, it'll just spit out a default version. So you may need to update some of this if it didn't spit that out for yours. And so now what we need to do is add our extension to this environment, right? So this is where if we wanted to define other extensions, we could list multiples. We could also do app templates here. This project is not going to do an app template. We're just going to keep it simple. So this is a basic blenv file mapping our extension. So we've defined our extensions and our app templates in our project, and now we connect them to our environment. And so then, now that we're this far, running it is super simple. It's just simply go to blenv, and then you type in the Blender command. Oh wait, first though, actually, we need to run the setup command. So this is what I was telling you earlier. What you can see is we made a link here so that this folder, which is where my source code is linked to this folder right here. And this folder structure is underneath of .blenv. And so you can see this mimics the Blender directory structure if you're used to it, if you're used to poking around. If you code for Blender, you probably are used to that. So we're basically making a little link there. And so that's what that setup command does. So now that we've done that, we can go Blenv render, Blenv Blender, and now what we're going to do is actually run our extension. This tutorial extension that we're using from Blender, if you're not familiar, what it does is it basically just is a very simple extension. All it does is it's basically your Hello World extension. So you can see I'm highlighting this function here. All that we're going to do, all that our extension does is add this function to this menu, and then when you click it, it just moves by one whatever block you have selected. And so that shows you that it's working, right? And so we can close this. And now what happens, so if I run my actual Blender, so now this is my regular Blender that I opened from my system icon. And so now if we go back here and we go back to this menu, that button is gone, right? Because it's only in our virtual Blender environment. So now what I found, the reason why I made this project is what I found is I would have many different projects that I was developing, or app templates versus extensions, and then they kind of pollute your Blender namespace. So then when you just want to go and use Blender, it was kind of difficult because you had a whole bunch of these things sort of competing. Okay, and lastly, you can take a look at the README file here. If you need any other information, you can click here on documentation. And so we've got a little getting started here, which basically walks you through what I've just done. And then there are a couple example projects here. We have an example using an app template. We have an example extension, which is very similar to what I just did. And then, of course, the documentation for our CLI. But should you ever forget that, you can just do help. No such options. Type hyphen help. See? Very useful. Thank you. So thank you for sticking around. I hope you got something out of this. Remember, this is still a beta project, so think about that before you incorporate this into any production work. But please check it out. Go to the repository. I'm going to be adding more features, more tutorials. You know, I'm accepting pull requests if there's any other features, you know, so this is going to be free for the community, and I hope that the community can get something out of it. Thank you once again. I'm Brad Corlett, and this is A Little Bit of Everything.